What is up, guys? So this is going to be my review for Supergirl Season 3, Episode 12, titled For Good. Like I said in my trailer breakdown and my synopsis breakdown for this video, for this episode, I wasn't expecting much, because Supergirl does this thing every season where they have an episode or two that just goes off track from the season, from the momentum of the story of the season, and just focuses on the B characters like James or Lena. And this is one of those episodes where it focuses more on James and Lena. And because of that, those episodes are usually really bad, or ranging from really bad to okay, but in general, not really great ever. So because of that, I wasn't expecting much from this episode. And the synopsis and the trailer didn't really look that exciting either. And I gotta say, I wasn't disappointed by this episode because I wasn't expecting much, but it was probably the worst episode of the season so far. This season has actually been pretty good so far. The only episode that I gave a low score was Midvale, and not because it was bad or anything, but it's because it was kind of pointless. This episode, however, is just bad. It's not pointless. It has some point to it, especially the B plot, or basically only the B plot, but it does have something to it, but it's just really bad. First of all, Morgan Edge is the villain of this episode, and I said in one of my previous episode reviews that I like him as a villain, but now I'm starting to really dislike him. Let me rephrase that. I don't dislike him. I just dislike the episodes he's in because they just don't work at all, because they always focus on Lena and her rivalry with Morgan Edge, and it's just so boring and uninteresting, and like, who really cares? And also, the way they portray Morgan Edge as a villain that everybody hates, it's really annoying. And this episode didn't stray far away from that. It didn't do it any better. It just made Morgan Edge, even though he's a pretty good villain, the episodes he's in, including this one, really portray him really badly. The actor doesn't portray him badly. The episode in general portrays him really badly, and in terms of a villain, which is why the episodes he's in are mostly the worst episodes of this season, and this is the worst episode of those episodes. Also, like I said earlier, this is another one of the episodes that just completely derails the momentum of the season. Even though episode 11 wasn't amazing or anything, it still like perpetuated the momentum of the season. It was going really strong from episode 9, 10, 11. It was really going with a clear path with Rain. Episode 8 did break that a little bit after episode 7, and that's a big problem with the crossovers in general. But ever since episode 9, the momentum of Rain and that whole storyline has been going really strong. Episode 9, 10, and 11. And also the Legion of Superheroes storyline. And this episode completely derails that. There is a subplot with Rain or Sam, which I will talk about in a little bit. But other than that, it doesn't perpetuate any of the momentum that was built up in episode 9, 10, and 11. And like I said, the Legion of Superheroes too. I mean, Brainiac 5 and Supergirl were not in this episode at all, and unless I missed it, they weren't even. It wasn't even explained why they weren't around ever, which is just really weird. Like, if you don't show characters and have no explanation for why they're around, it's gonna be a minus on the episode because it doesn't make any sense, especially characters that I like seeing around, like Supergirl and Brainiac 5. So yeah, just completely derailed the momentum of the season, which really sucks. Like I said, this is one of those episodes. Supergirl does this every season. It has a couple episodes that does this, and this is the worst case I think I've ever seen, because this is the first time that Supergirl has a clear storyline and a main villain that, like, in general. And sure, they had Morgan Edge episodes earlier this season that had nothing to do with the main plot, but that was before the big Rain plot started. The big Rain versus Supergirl plot, which started in episode 9 when they fought, and ever since then, the momentum has been going really strong. And then you have a Morgan Edge episode that has nothing to do with the plot with Lena and James, and it completely derails the momentum, which completely sucks. Speaking of Morgan Edge and Lena Luthor, I said in my trailer breakdown and in my synopsis breakdown that if Lena is actually the attempted killer on Morgan Edge, that will probably save the episode for me, because it will be a very crazy twist and an unexpected one at that. Even though I predicted it, I just didn't think it was something that the Supergirl writers had the balls to do. And yeah, I was right, or I guess I was wrong, because I wanted them to make Lena the attempted killer on Morgan Edge, because that would lead her to a much more interesting and darker path than she is right now. She's on right now, which is completely, like, really boring. Like, her whole character is kind of pointless and boring at this point. If she was the attempted killer on Morgan Edge, that would have led her down a more dark and interesting path, and I would have loved to see that. But turns out that Lillian Luthor was the one that tried to kill Morgan Edge, which is, even though I didn't expect them to do it, I was really hoping they would. They would make Lena the attempted killer, and they didn't, which I'm disappointed. Again, I'm not completely disappointed because I didn't expect it to happen, but at the same time, I am disappointed because I wanted it to happen, which I guess wanted it means more than expected it. Speaking of Lillian Luthor being back, this is the first episode that I can review, that I can voice my opinion on her, because it's the first episode of Season 3 that she's in, so it means it's the first episode that I'm reviewing that she is in, so I can voice my opinion on her, and my opinion on her is that I don't like her as a villain. I think she's a really boring villain in general, and which is why seeing her back in this episode didn't get me excited at all. It wasn't teased in any of the promotional photos or trailers, probably because the writers know that nobody really likes her, because if they knew that people liked her, they would have promoted it. They also probably would have promoted the Lexo suit, which I don't know why they didn't. That was probably the most interesting part of the episode, the fact that the Lexo suit was in it at all. Even though it was done really poorly, the fact that it was in the episode was pretty cool, so they probably should have promoted that. But Lillian Luthor is not a character I enjoy watching, which is why it's another minus for this episode. Like I just said, the Lexo suit is in this episode, and even though it being in the episode is pretty cool and also marketable, I don't know why they didn't mark it, the fact that Lillian Luthor used it is kind of lame. Like, that's the first person we saw in the Lexo suit. We didn't even see Lex Luthor in it. We've never even seen Lex Luthor, so the fact that Lillian Luthor is using it is really kind of lame. And that's not even the worst part, though. The worst part is the fight scene she had with Mon-El and Supergirl, because it was so bad. It looked terrible. It looked like it was made on a $100 budget. Obviously, that's exaggerating a little bit, but it looked so bad. It was, the choreography basically kind of was terrible, and the fighting was ridiculously bad. It was just such a bad fight scene that I don't even know why they put it in the episode. They didn't need to put the Lexo suit in the episode at all. Even though it was cool that it was in the episode at all, I don't think they needed to put it in there at all. They didn't need to have a fight scene in this episode. If they wanted to save budget on this episode with a lower budget episode, which I could get that, but then they just throw that away, that whole concept away, putting in this Lexo suit fight scene, which ended up looking so terrible. Maybe it would have been more interesting if Brainiac 5 and Saturn Girl were around in the fight scene, which is never explained to the best of my knowledge. If they were around, probably would have been more interesting. But just with Supergirl and Mon-El, it wasn't interesting. It was a boring, really terrible fight scene. Not because it was only Supergirl and Mon-El, but I'm just saying that if Brainiac 5 and Saturn Girl were around, it could have been a little bit more interesting. But they weren't, which doesn't make the fight scene less interesting. It just makes it less interesting than it could have been. But just the fight scene in general was ridiculously bad. So that's the whole main plot of the episode. The subplot is Sam getting tested by Alex, and that's definitely the only part of the episode that actually mattered to the season at all. You could have cut out the rest of the episode and it would not have changed the season at all, but this subplot kinda a little bit changes the season, and it changes Reign's character. It doesn't change your character, but it's not pointless. This part of the episode is not pointless, but at the same time, it's not great or anything. It's not exciting or anything. It's a fine subplot. It's not something I wanted to get back to every time I was on the main plot, which the main plot wasn't great either. But I'd say the subplot was pretty okay. And then we get to the thing that actually matters in this episode, and those are at the beginning of the episode and at the end. Those are the parts that actually change, they affect the season as a whole, and it was like they were both really small things. The first thing is Kara's dream, seeing the three Reigns, and they they cleverly shadowed the third one because they don't have an actress for her yet. But at the same time, it was so obvious that they did that because the other two were in the limelight. Like, you could see their faces, but the third one you can't because they don't have an actress for her yet. It was clever to do that, but at the same time, it was so obvious that they did that. But what does the dream mean? Why is Kara having this dream, seeing rain, purity, and pestilence? I still don't know how to pronounce that. I'll have to figure that out in a minute after I finish recording this, how to pronounce the third one's name. But I actually don't. I have no idea what the dream means. I don't know if like Kara's connected to the rains or something. Maybe she's a rain herself. That would, a world killer. That would be, world killers. I was saying rains. What I meant was world killers. Maybe she's a world killer herself. That would be a crazy twist, which would blow my mind, honestly, thinking about it now. I doubt they're going to do that. It's another thing like Lena attempting to kill Morgan Edge. It's something that they would never do, but if they did, even though it wouldn't be comic book accurate, it would be a really, really crazy twist. But that's the only thing I could think of that why Kara would have that dream. And then the thing at the end is the DEO finding purity, which is pretty cool, and that's going to be the main focus of the next episode, being the DEO finding purity and capturing her and interrogating her, and she'll probably become a full-on world killer in episode 13, which is actually the last episode before the 2-month break because of Legends of Tomorrow and Black Lightning and all that stuff. So, in conclusion, I thought this episode was the worst episode of the season by far. Midvale wasn't great or anything. It was fine, but it was pointless, which is why I gave it a low grade. This episode, like I said earlier, is just bad. It's the worst episode of the season because if you pluck out all the rain stuff and the world killer stuff, you could just put it in season 2 and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Mondale is there. His costume barely looks any different. Just the only thing that would make it look any different is the world killer stuff, which is interesting, but it's just not. The rest of the episode with Lily and Luthor and Lena and Morgan Edge is not good. I'll give this episode a 5.9 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.